Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, all. It's Bear here. And in today's video, we're taking another step into the understandings around the impacts in adults that early childhood adversity, early childhood trauma removal, and placement trauma has, so that we can start to create the understandings we need to build and improve and heal our core relationships, our relationships with our family, but also to give the understandings around what happens and why. I hope over these next couple of videos, as we explore this deeper, we can get to that place of going, well, this is why this is happening now. I know it is not an attack on me. I know I can work with this. We can start to understand the triggers and responses we have, as well as the triggers and responses we create or trigger in others, so that we can move past this competitiveness and this combativeness within conversations within families and move towards creating an open understanding, truthful conversation, healing conversations, so that we can create the close relationships that we need to be able to heal and come out of survival.
This isn't a story about what you know or think you know about love. It's about what your nervous system learned in your beginning and about survival, and how that wiring shapes every hug, every fight, and every moment, and every way you try to let someone become close. We're going to walk through a landscape you might know intimately, either in yourself, in a partner, or in someone you care for. And we're going to do it with compassion. Your responses are not character flaws. They are neurological imprints, echoes of an environment you didn't choose, but which your body was forced to adapt to. Let's start where love and danger got cross-wired. In a developing child, the brain's stress response system is learning to calibrate itself. It's asking, is the world safe? Are people safe? Am I welcome? And am I allowed to be here? The answer is written not in ideas, but in billions of neural connections forged through repeated experience. When caregivers are warm and consistent, the brain wires for trust. But when caregivers are sources of betrayal, chaos, and terror, through abuse, unpredictability, or neglect, the system adapts to a brutal contradiction. The person you run to for comfort is the same person you have learned you need to run from, cannot trust, or will at any moment abandon you. This is the biological cradle of disorganized, insecure, and fear-avoidant attachment. Safety and danger occupy the same face, the same hands, the same voice, the same outcome. And the brain never forgets it. Deep inside the temporal lobe sits the amygdala, your brain's internal smoke alarm. In a nurturing environment, it learns to wait, to assess, to quiet down when a caregiver soothes. But under the relentless unpredictability and pressure of early trauma and chaos, the amygdala becomes enlarged and hyper-reactive. Your brain doesn't just detect the potential of smoke, it screams, "Fire!" in a room that seems perfectly calm to everyone else. As an adult, this means you don't just think you're being rejected. Your brain screams it, even if you can no longer remember why.
If we are ever able to understand what is going on within us and why we respond the way we do, why we feel the way we do within our connections and interactions, why we pursue and prioritize different things, and why these processes feel so out of control within us when triggered, we need to understand where it all began. Our nervous system can only respond the way we have learned to. Our nervous system cannot be talked to. It cannot learn from books. It cannot learn from self-talk. It can only learn from experiences, from all the varied interpretations our body and nervous system learn through the experiences we physically engage with and the experiences we physically have. This is why these videos I feel are so important, is because if we can open the door of understanding, then we can start to create the close relationships and friendships and the safeness within those friendships and relationships to be able to have the experiences to teach our nervous system to heal. But that is a journey to get to. And the first step is understanding where we began. And one of the challenges we have in exploring where we began is if we come from a trauma base, our entire makeup is trying to repress that trauma. We don't want to remember those experiences. We don't want to remember the triggers. We don't want to remember what happened. So we kind of get into this place, this void in between two paths or two parts of us, and we begin to exist there. And that void is called survival. But if we can start to work on creating understandings as to some of the reasons why we have the responses, we can create a core connection with one or two people to help us feel safe enough to begin to get our nervous system to open the door, to allow us to start to explore the reasons why we learned to feel and behave and interpret the way we did. And through that, we can expand upon that to open the door for further understanding and further interactions.
Ever wonder why a simple silence feels like an incoming storm? A neutral face shouldn't feel like a threat. An awkward moment or a misstep shouldn't feel like the world is about to end or the friendship or love is over. Yet, for some of us, a partner's quiet moment triggers a primal alarm deep within our psyche. An unread message or a slight shift in tone suddenly becomes a sign of impending abandonment. Your heart begins to race, and your mind spins a web of worst-case scenarios that feel incredibly real. This is emotional hyper-vigilance, a state of constant scanning for signs of trouble and threat in those we love most. It feels like a modern crisis, but its roots are actually buried much deeper in your personal history. Your body is reacting with a survival instinct designed to protect a younger, much more vulnerable version of you. In the past, anticipating a parent's mood was a necessary way to stay safe, be allowed to stay or to survive in an unpredictable world. You learned to read the shadows before you could even read words, making you a master of emotional detection. Today, that same radar is still running, living in the background of every moment and every relationship, often mistaking what others feel are normal interactions for a brewing conflict. You're not overreacting. Your alarm system is tuned to a frequency of danger, rejection, and being thrown to the curb with nothing and no one else. A frequency only your own nervous system can hear or see. A frequency generated in survival and justified by every experience you had as a very young child.
When we start to understand what emotional hypervigilance actually is and how much of our resources it takes from us in how we are trying to interpret and perceive threat in every interaction and constantly, and how much of our emotional resources are used up trying to not tread on people's landmines and trigger them, trying not to sabotage or say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing or be interpreted the wrong way, and all the scenarios that we run and all the ways that we try to not make the mistakes that inevitably we end up making. When understanding that we do not have an inexhaustible emotional resource, we actually get exhausted quite easily. And that leads us to where we react rather than respond. We react rather than interact with. And we feed and fall back to the need to have a survival base, a survival set of responses, a survival set of rules that dictate all of our interactions and outcomes.
And here is where the painful cycle tightens. Because that intense reaction, that flurry of anxious questions or defensive anger, is incomprehensible to a partner or friend who doesn't share your wiring. They see only the intensity, not the invisible storm beneath it, the constant effort to interpret what has gone wrong and why the relationship might end. So you get labeled overreactive, too much, needy, intense. That label doesn't just sting, it confirms the deepest wiring. It is the echo of a childhood where every step, every word, every action was met with adversity, accusations, threats, and harm. Any sign of your very real distress was dismissed, where your tears were met with contempt or cold silence. Being labeled as overreactive feeds the cycle of separation and imminent rejection that was repeated throughout childhood and now repeats itself in adult relationships. You become terrified of being abandoned, so you cling or lash out, become cold or numb. The partner withdraws or fights back, delivering the exact rejection you were trying to prevent. The prophecy fulfills itself, and the brain learns the lesson once more. Connection is not safe. We come to believe that we are broken, that we will always be alone, suspended in the empty space between belonging and isolation, watching others seem rooted in love, family, and connection. It can feel like a void that never fully closes, no matter how deeply we long to find a way through it.
When we start to explore the impact emotional hypervigilance has, especially when looking at long-term relationships, when you're looking at husbands, wives, and children, from the outside, it can become very evident the way people build their own little fortresses within that family unit. And routines take place, and there's all these internal mechanisms of just coping within that family. And for a lot of people, that is enough for a time. But the thing is, inevitably, change will happen. Inevitably, children will bring in something new, or they will move out, or a job will change, or having to move house, or something will occur. And there isn't the social unity within that family structure to cope or even create a plan. And this is where this complacency within our family systems, when we come from this base, creates the most harm and generationally repeats itself. Because when we come from childhood adversity, we had to learn to solve the problems ourselves by ourselves. We learned that we couldn't go to our parents or those who were raising us for solutions because they were as much there to harm us as to support us. And the children in these relationships have the same difficulty because their parents are reactive coming from this base because of their emotional hypervigilance. Conversational pathways have not been developed, learned, or grown. And everybody has built their own little camps within this household. Things disproportionately get torn apart. And we see this play out all the time. But as always, awareness is key. If we create these understandings and we start to build the pathways before the issues arise, we can start to open the door to heal and create real change.
We become what we learn to be. The way we act, respond, feel, and make sense of the world is shaped first by our earliest environment. From the people around us, we absorb more than memories. We absorb strategies for survival, beliefs about what is normal. We absorb ideas about how problems are solved and assumptions about what we should accept. If no one shows us another way of living, those early adaptations can begin to feel like truth. Over time, those patterns harden into identity. We come to believe that this is simply who we are. We believe that this is how relationships work, and that the world must fit the story we built to survive it. That story can feel like a life raft, especially when anything unfamiliar begins to stir uncertainty or fear. So we hold on to it with all we have and all we are. The difficulty is that if we keep walking the same path, we usually arrive at the same place. Change begins when we choose a different direction. Still, it helps to move carefully, because some new paths can turn out to be the old ones in disguise.
If we're ever going to understand why family dynamics are so challenging, why so many marriages and relationships fail, why so many families tear themselves apart, we need to start to look at the core reasons behind it. And within the majority of these household situations, it's because generational trauma has impacted flow down. Because people build fortresses within those relationships, people work on routine and coping rather than building the connections and the interactions and the emotional experiences to feel safe enough to work together to find creative solutions by sharing the burden, sharing the experiences, and sharing the workload. When we're trying to heal early childhood adversity, one of the hardest things is accepting that it changed us and understanding what impact that change has and not turning it into being, well, I'm broken, I cannot be fixed. We all can be. As I've said in numerous videos, when looking at how people have come out of early childhood adversity when they're in placement situations, either in adoption or foster care, when they've had those phenomenal caregivers, that have allowed them to have the emotional experiences to be safe and to grow and to develop the ability to change how their past traumas impacted their survival and come out of survival. That shows us that it's possible. But the only way we can is we need to have a core group of close people, either biological family or chosen relationship family, friendship family even, to have that co-regulation with. We have to have the compatibility for that to work. It's not just people putting their hand up. We have to grow through experiences to create that natural compatibility to help us all heal and come out of survival. As always, I love your guys' comments and feedback and support for the channel. Please be mindful, please be safe, please be respectful, and I will see you all next time.